We are live.
Hello, everybody. Hope we are indeed live. Strider here. Long time no see. It's been a while since we did one of those, and today's occasion is a very special one. We will be talking about Wheel of Time, and even more so, even more so special is because we will have a really interesting ghost. Sorry, ghost. I switched to my language. Guest with us. We have with us Lauren from Unraveling the Pattern. How are you, sir?
I'm really good, and it's okay. You can call me a ghost. My kids say I'm so pale that I look like a ghost. So
I don't know. I mean, that beard, that's way too cool for a ghost. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's true. This takes away from the paleness. Yeah. I'm happy to be
Uh,
here. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about the Wheel of Time, and nice to meet you both. Yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we are excited to have you here. So, everybody, also, if you'll forgive me, we haven't done this in a while, so I might be a bit rambly. We actually had plans to do Wheel of Time streams. However, life got in the way for our little fellowship, and we sadly didn't do this. However, within our group, we had a lot of people who really, really, really enjoyed the show, myself included. Um, so here we are. We want to talk about this show. We want to also help for those people who maybe haven't heard of the show, because the show has been canceled by Amazon, which is a ridiculous decision. We want to also help, like, just boost the voice a little bit. And the fact that we have this stream is because of that. Also, just because we want to talk about the show. So, before we give the chance to our guest to introduce himself and his absolutely amazing channel. Uh, I feel like Lawrence and Aiden's and my experience is probably much much lower. So I'll just open with myself saying I am purely a show watcher. I have a friend who is well read in the Wheel of Time, and he's my go-to person to explain stuff. But that's it. I approached the show as a completely new viewer, and I had a great time. We will obviously talk more about our impressions of the show, but just for a little starters, Aiden, what about you? What is your Wheel of Time experience? Have you read the books, or was this new for you?
Yeah,
Did you watch it when it came out, or what was the?
both. Yeah. So growing up, Wheel of Time was a series my dad really loved, and he was always trying to put me onto it. And so I read. I haven't read the whole series, but I read a couple of the first ones in high school, and then I recently picked them up and started listening to the audiobooks again because there's a lot that I had forgotten over the years, and I started watching the series, and I was trying to remember what lined up with it and what I could remember. And so I've got a little bit of foundation. I don't know much about the extended universe, but I've got a couple smatterings of tidbits and lore trivia questions I've kind of learned either just through online interaction or Googling. I spend a lot of time on Wikipedia learning about stuff that I probably shouldn't have gotten to yet. But
Uh-oh.
so yeah, I know. I know a handful of spoilers for Wheel of Time, but that's uh, my own fault
Well,
there.
so we have a perfect balance here. Like, you have me, who is a complete newbie. Aiden, you kind of, like, you're there, but not necessarily the lore master. And we have Mr. Unraveling the Pattern himself, Lauren. Um, Please tell us how your love with this series started. Tell us about your channel, and I'll just quickly say I discovered your channel while watching season two, and I absolutely loved it. And I'll nerd out about it after you finish your introduction. So please go. Tell us about
Thank
yourself. Tell us about the channel.
thank you so much. I always love to hear when people appreciate my channel because I have a love for the Wheel of Time. Obviously, I love the lore. I love to explain things, but for a living I basically make explainer videos and things. And so to be able to combine those two passions of making videos and the Wheel of Time is like the greatest thing ever. So I'm so glad to hear that my videos are helpful to people, especially non-book readers, right? My goal when I started my YouTube channel was basically to try and help people who I knew were going to be confused while watching the show. Because, I mean, you know full well as Lord of the Rings fans, the lore is deep and it can be difficult to explain in a TV adaptation or even a film adaptation. And so I'm the kind of person who loves to consume media that is an adaptation based on other things, and then to go watch videos by experts who can explain to me what I just watched. I personally love that, especially when it comes to like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've never read the comics, so it's all kind of new to me through the TV shows and the movies, and so I really appreciate that kind of geeking out about Easter eggs and understanding the deeper picture and how it relates to the comics, that sort of thing. So, um, anyway, yeah. So as far as how I became a fan, I was about 13 or 14. This literally almost 30 years ago. I was just getting into reading. I was reading Michael Crichton, like Jurassic Park and Sphere, that kind of thing. And I was like, I think I like to read. Yeah. I didn't previously like to read before that. And then I had this guy that was in my neighborhood who saw me reading. I think I like babysat his kids while he and his wife went on a date. And he saw me reading a Michael Crichton book and he said, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And he handed me The Eye of the World. And I took one look at that cover and I was like, what is this? Some stupid romance novel? I thought it looked really stupid, but I didn't want to be rude. So I took it. The funny thing is I've heard many people's stories over the years. They love that initial cover of The Eye of the World. That's one of the things that excited them about the books. But to me, I was like, this looks really weird. It took me 3 months to finally get into it. And then when I finally got into it and read it, I've been hooked for life. I wasn't the smartest reader. So when I finished that first book, there's a line from Moraine. She says, "The dragon has been reborn." And I was like, what? What's the dragon? That's how I responded to it for first time reading it. I literally did not understand that was the point of the book. So I basically paid attention to the action and not much else. But since then, I've reread the books with each new book coming out. And so I've reread those first 5 or 6 books, I don't know, dozens of times probably at this point. I never got to meet Robert Jordan in person, but when I was in college, they announced, and it was very sad, but when Robert Jordan passed away, it was like losing a family member. But then they announced that Brandon Sanderson was going to finish the series. And Brandon Sanderson just happened to be a professor at the college I was going to.
Oh,
and
wow.
So they were literally like bringing my favorite book series to my backyard. And so I suddenly was like, I got to go to the midnight release party of the last 3 books. And I got to meet other people who were involved in this fandom since long before I was. People like Matt Hatch from the Dusty Wheel, who was literally like a beta reader on those last 3 books. He was involved with, in some ways, guiding Brandon Sanderson to the ending. I got to meet people like that. And that's where I sort of really jumped into the fandom outside of online forums and theories, which were huge at the turn of the century, but yeah, so anyway, I got to go to the midnight release party for The Gathering Storm. And then I got specially handpicked to be what they called a tower guard for Towers of Midnight, the second to last book. So then I got to go behind the scenes and meet Brandon Sanderson in person and help him with signing the books before they came out to the public. And then for A Memory of Light, the final book, I got to do the same thing. I got to go behind the scenes and meet Harriet, Robert Jordan's widow and editor of all the books. And I got to meet Brandon again. Anyway, ever since then, I've been more involved online with the community. And then, of course, when the show was announced about 5 years ago, that's when I was like, I've always wanted to do a YouTube channel. This is something I actually know something about. I could take advantage of this and help people understand it. And so that's kind of what I set out to do. So my first few videos were lore-based videos, like what is the Wheel of Time, and what is the pattern, those kinds of things. And then as the show came out, I got to make breakdowns about the episodes, which I'm really proud of. I had a lot of fun with those. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I just love the Wheel of Time. I've read other things over the years. I've read Tolkien. I've read Brandon Sanderson books, but it's like my brain doesn't have room for any of it. I can't. I've got too much Wheel of Time in my head, and everything else just goes in one ear and out the other.
I think within
Yeah,
this nerd space, everyone's always got their hyperfixation project. There's always one thing that they know everything about, and then everything else is just kind of like, on top.
Exactly.
there's always that one book or one thing to rule them all. Like, this is my thing. Everything else, I can really like it, but it's just, there's no other slots. This is the main slot for me. I mean,
One
obviously it's the Lord of
obsession.
the Rings, so I can absolutely relate to this, because I mean, I read the books when I was 8 to read the
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings. That was mind blowing, and it stuck around obviously for forever. And yeah, 20 some years later, here we are, having a little, being a part of the Lord of the Rings podcast. So I guess it's a very similar story to yourself as well. So awesome. I'll then just go back to what I said before. I oh, actually, we can maybe start with our experience with the show.
Mhm.
So maybe before we go in the in talking about the season 3, because I feel like it kind of deserves its special mention, special little section to talk about season 3, because it was absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe we can just talk about the experience with the show without delving further into season 3. So, Aidan, how was your experience with this? Like, did you watch it? Did you watch season 1 when it came out?
Yeah,
Did you enjoy everything before season 3? What was your?
I remember my I think my dad again was the one who filled me in on the fact that they were um, making a series for it, and I remember we were pretty excited about it. We watched most of season 1 together, although I wasn't living at home at the time, so there was a good majority of it I ended up watching on my own just because of time restraints, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was actually what inspired me to go back and reread the books, because I just remember watching it and being like, there were a couple moments where I was like, I feel like I can't remember like what happened in the books now. I swear I don't remember this, and then going back and getting to compare and seeing some of the differences, and uh, appreciating it all the more for it. I know that there's a large community out there of people who are, book purists. You encounter them in pretty much any media: Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings. I
Last of
mean,
Us lately.
Last of Us. There's even stuff like Star Wars, which doesn't have strict books. There's still people who are very much lore purists and they don't like dancing around. But I've always been a multimedia adaptation kind of guy. I love seeing things painted in different forms, in different ways. And so, there were aspects of the book that I think they did better in the show, and there's things in the show that I think they did better in the book. And it's always interesting to see different interpretations in the way convey the work. And at the end of the day, I've been saying this: the books aren't going anywhere. They're still on your shelves, and you can
Right.
always go back and enjoy it the way you want to enjoy it. But for me personally, I enjoyed the series as a whole. I think that the first season obviously historically had some of the hiccups, which pretty much every single show that came out around that time did, because of COVID and writers, actor strikes, pretty much everything that's been plaguing the film and TV industry for the last couple of years. And I think that's really what makes, the topic of our conversation today all the more heartbreaking, is that when they finally pushed past the writer strikes and the COVID and everything that had been bogging them down, they delivered, I think, what is unanimously agreed on is the best season of the show, and what promised to just continue to be a really good adaptation. And that's what makes the cancellation so heartbreaking to me, is I feel like they finally got their system down. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
derail the conversation, but I imagine as Lord of the Rings fans, you're probably Rings of Power fans
Mhm.
to a degree, right? I imagine that there's a little bit of concern there. Oh, well, if Amazon can cancel the Wheel of Time, what are they going to do to the Rings of Power, right? Is there any of that sort of concern going on in that community?
Um, I,
That's a good question.
I just,
Yeah, Aidan, you can go first. What do you think?
sorry, I don't
Because
want to.
I'm curious as well what people think.
Yeah, so there's different levels of concern. It depends on where you look. I think, there obviously something like this happens. It always puts people uneasy. The benefit for Rings of Power, at least, because I think that I would agree that it would be at risk, because I think everything is at risk in the modern age of these TV shows that cost millions and millions of dollars. It basically needs to be a slam hit or it gets canceled. So it's very high risk, high reward. But the one benefit going for Rings of Power is the bargaining power that the Tolkien estate holds and the way that they constructed their contract with Amazon. They've basically locked them into a contract for 50 hours of television, and in order to break that contract, they would have to pay heavy fines, to the point that it's probably just more cost effective for them to just make the series than it is for them to cancel it at this point. I mean, obviously, cross my fingers, knock on wood, I don't think anything is out of the realm of possibility in the world we live in now. You never know how things are going to go, but just based off of the sheer nature of the contract and the way it's constructed, I think the 5 seasons are at least a guarantee. But again,
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, and as well a great point about Tolkien's estate. I mean they're kind of like midway through, and I guess with the thing with Wheel of Time, because the Lord of the Rings is this established brand, right? It's some of the most iconic movies ever, and there's a lot of power even behind this. While
Yeah.
Wheel of Time had this struggle to, I mean, I guess it started in a similar place like Game of Thrones, which wasn't a known thing. However, the first season kicked off really well. It was a stellar season, and then it kind of went from there, even despite the quality dropping later on. But I feel like Wheel of Time has dealt a very bad hand because, again, as I said, like starting from this position as an unknown entity, but also, like, I mean, this terrible situation with COVID just impacted
Yeah.
the show really a lot in the first season, and I think I have a pretty solid perspective that actually fits really well with this. I mean, solid in terms of like it fits with this because I am one of these people who watched the first season, was really hyped, looking forward to it, and then I was like kind of disappointed because especially with the finale of season one. But then later on, when you learn that the guy playing Matt Cotton left before the end of the season, was filmed, as far as I know. Obviously, it was filmed during COVID. It was filmed like exactly like right in the middle of the pandemic, and there were just a
Right.
lot of rough spots there. So actually, I didn't see season two. I just I wanted to see it, but life kind of got in the way, and then I couldn't see it when it was coming out. Then I just kind of like I'll do it, and then 2 years later I didn't do it, right. But then I was like, okay, season three is coming out. I actually did want to watch Wheel of Time. I'm very interested in it. I have this friend who loves Wheel of Time as much as I love the Lord of the Rings, and I was like, I need to watch this. Like now it's the good time. Um, and then I binged season two like in the week before the first 3 episodes of season three dropped. And I was like, oh
Mhm.
my god, this show is great. Like every episode of season two felt like an upgrade compared to season one, and it just kept being, more and more like more better, more intriguing. The world kept expanding. The effects looked really well. I started liking the characters a lot, like caring about them, and so on and so on. And then season three starts, opens with an insane scene, which was
yeah.
that battle of Aes Sedai. And it just keeps going and going. And it's like, and from the first like 5 minutes of season three to the end of season three, there wasn't a single minute where I wasn't having a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Just pure, easy fun. I just had a great time, and especially as someone who, as I said, I'm only a show watcher. For me this was new, fresh, original. It was just perfect. Like it was exactly what I needed. Like I needed a series that's not the Lord of the Rings or something that we have seen already 1,000 times, because the Lord of the Rings, there's nothing that can surprise me basically. I read all the books
Mm-hmm.
1,000 times. But like Star Wars, Marvel, and so on and so on, like at some point it kind of starts retreading new ground. But Wheel of Time, it was completely new to me, and as someone who hasn't thus read the books, I just had the best time. And season three, I mean, oh my god.
Yeah.
But I guess we will get to this, and maybe we can now actually build towards that. Lauren, what was your
Yeah.
take on season one? what were your impressions, and then take us through all the way to season 3 and what you thought of season 3, of the whole
It's
show so
amazing
far.
what COVID did, isn't it? It just really hurt a lot of things. The hype leading up to season 1 was like nothing I've ever experienced. And one of the cool things was they knew at that point before season 1 aired that only book purists were paying attention, and they really catered to us. They made these tiny little ads that only book fans would care about. Like they did a little tease about the heron marked sword, and they did a little tease about Tom's guitar, which is funny because in the books Tom doesn't play the guitar; he plays a harp. And so they did these little things that got fans like really curious, really excited, but they were not sent out to the general audiences at all yet. This was just marketing for the book fans. And I was making a bit of a name for myself at that point because I had started my YouTube channel and people had responded positively to it. And so I was very lucky to be included in some of that kind of early marketing. And when season 1 came out, they invited some fans to premieres all across the world. So I got the chance to go to Denver to basically host the premiere of season 1 for a small audience, which was really cool. Some people went to London and like interviewed the cast and some other things. And I was obviously very jealous at the time, but still so excited just to be a part of any of this. And so that when we sat in that room and watched those episodes for the first time, it was really fascinating because, yeah, they definitely changed some things from the books. And I remember my initial reaction wasn't negative, but it was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting, And I have found, just like the books, re-watching the show and rereading the books brings such a layer of depth to this story that as I rewatch the show, I gain a greater appreciation for what they were doing from the start each time. And at first, it's kind of like, ripping off a Band-Aid or something. It was a little shocking at first. And my initial reaction was, oh, that's not what I was expecting. But as I kind of went back and rewatched, I appreciated it more and more. By the time season 1 ended, I had a good understanding of what we had gotten ourselves into. You know what I mean? And again, this isn't to say it was bad, but season 1 was not what was expected. It was definitely a mixed bag for book fans. And within the community, we call people who are like book purists, but are negative towards the show and the showrunners, we call those people book cloaks, like the white cloaks, right?
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they've sort of embraced that name, and so there are literally channels that just exist to hate on it, and they call themselves the Children of the Light, which is really funny to me because they're basically white supremacists, right? That's kind of which is really funny.
We were talking about this yesterday, or just the other day, in a Tolkien group chat about all the memes people make to hate on Rings of Power, where they'll portray themselves as Denethor, and like Faramir will be Rings of Power and Boromir's Lord of the Rings, to like showcase like how they love one but hate the other. And it's that same thing. It's like, why do you want to be Denethor?
Right? Like, and
like he's the one in the wrong here. You should not be doing this.
Right.
Don't hate on it. But here we are.
And I'm sure they understand the irony. I think that's what they're going for. But it's still, it's a funny thing to me to be like proudly calling yourself a white cloak, But anyway, long story short, I've seen a lot over the years. I'm sure you have seen some haters for Rings of Power. I'm sure you know what it's like to deal with that side of the community. And there's a lot of blame that could go around. This is what's tough is we're all kind of in these phases of grief. I'm kind of in my bargaining phase right now, where I'm thinking maybe if we had done something different for season 1, or maybe we can still get another streamer to save the show. That's kind of where we're at as a fandom right now. I went through my anger phase. That's kind of past now. My denial when I first heard the news, I was like, there's no way this is true. I couldn't believe it. But I have to say that COVID was a major factor. And the ending of season 1 was rough, but it was completely changed for 2 major reasons, COVID being one of them. And then Matt, the actor who plays Matt, for reasons that we still don't know, he left the show after episode 6 of season 1. And they weren't able to recast him for the ending of season 1. And because of this decisions they were pretty much rushed to make in the middle of COVID to end season 1, they also had to completely rewrite season 2.
Yeah.
And so there's this sort of like snowball effect that was
Yeah.
unintended that happened
And
from
that
all of that.
was and that was one of the main things that made me go back and reread the books was that moment when Matt didn't go through the ways with them. I was like, I swear that didn't happen in the books. I got to go
Right.
back and reread it.
And not only, I mean, the ending was very different. All of them went to the eye of the world in the book. All of the
Yeah.
main characters, including Matt. So, you know, I think what they did for what they could was fine. Was it the strongest ending? No. But then season 2 came out, and now all the characters are sort of in different places and separate from each other. And um, it literally took, for me personally, I feel it took till the ending of season 3 to get Matt back in line with his book story. And that's kind of wild. I mean, that it took that one change early on late in season 1 led to this snowball effect, that this chain reaction, that they're still kind of we're recovering from. And the fact that they managed to do it, I mean, season 3, I think we can all agree, was just so strong. And I mean, my only complaint about season 3 is we didn't get more.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think there is this sort of, at least for me, there's this sort of feeling among some of the stronger show fans who are also book readers that, for better or worse, the early seasons kind of hurt some of the book fans, which hurt the show, in the sense that when you're turning book fans who should be evangelizing it and really trying to get the word out there, when you're turning them against it, that's tough to recover from early on. And so, as much as I like the first season, and people, especially show only watchers, it really was something unique. It's something we haven't seen before. The Wheel of Time, it's magic, it's sort of matriarchal society, it's all very fresh. And I think that's really exciting for non-book readers, but unfortunately I think they alienated some of the heavier book fans, and it kind of led to this division early on. I wish that people would give it more of a chance. Like I say, I think season 3 is not only the best season, but it's closest to the books as well. And so my feeling is, if Amazon could just release like an hour or 2 hour movie that sort of summarizes the first 2 seasons to get people to watch season 3, I think it would do very well for the show. I mean, even Game of Thrones, it did very well early on, but it was so much simpler. I don't even know if you can call Game of Thrones high fantasy. It has dragons, but
I think we
Yeah.
talked. Sorry,
I think we usually talk about it as the. I mean, at least I try to make the distinction, as I always say, Game of Thrones is low fantasy, because exactly as you said, like, it has dragons. I guess you could say there's a little bit of magic at some point, like, sprinkled across, but it's actually an extremely low fantasy
YouTube
setting.
video.
While, I mean, Wheel of Time is high fantasy, and I kept saying this for years, like, um, so I would agree, and I think the show, especially season 3, I mean, I keep saying, I think I mentioned it already before. For me, this is the best high fantasy. Even though it's higher fantasy than even the Lord of the Rings, because also the magic in the Lord of the Rings, while it's a very magical world, this the magic is very subtle in it. Still, you have a lot of magical creatures, but it's not necessarily there's a lot of magic blasting on your screen. But even this, I would say, like, for me, absolutely the best fantasy I have seen since the Lord of the Rings, easily the
I
best
think
high fantasy. And one of the people in the comments, Yauval, commented, "I don't understand how you can be a book fan and not think only episode 4 of season 3 is enough to love the show." I have heard this from a lot of people, including that friend I mentioned before, and I saw. I mean, so as a non-reader, that episode was. I watched it, and I watched it tomorrow again, and I'm forcing myself not to watch it again soon, because I want to, like, kind of forget some things and enjoy it more later, because it was just absolutely terrific. And I heard this from a lot of people. I think, Lauren, maybe we can touch on this episode now specifically, because I'm very excited to hear about your thoughts. But I mean, I saw, as I said, I saw your videos and
yeah.
you were very excited about it. I assume some people here probably know as well Daniel Green. He's also a booktuber, very big channel. He's a huge Wheel of Time fan. I think that's his with you, Lauren. That's his big thing. Um, and he was also like he was really excited about it, and I also remember watching him and his comments on season 1, season 2, and then season 3, and to see how the show really won him over and got him extremely hyped, because I watched also his, so yours and his channels were the two I was watching when I was watching season 3, and it was just really cool to see the hot of me, even though actually you were both extremely excited for it. So I mean, yeah, Iridian was absolutely terrifically done, and I just cannot wait to see it again. So, Lauren, want to tell us a bit about
Yeah.
this episode?
Well,
What did you think?
you're
Comments,
absolutely right. I
impressions?
mean, I will say, if you're a book reader and you maybe haven't read to this point in the story, the first three Wheel of Time books are quite formulaic. They're more kind of Tolkien esque. The first book in particular, he kind of copied the Fellowship of the Ring in a lot of ways. There's a lot of like very close similarities, and so one of the reasons I think season one was different from the books is because they didn't want to draw those parallels quite as strongly. They wanted it to feel like something unique. One of the things that season one did really well is they introduced the Aes Sedai and the White Tower sooner than the books do. Yes, we meet Moraine early on, but we don't. She's more like a mysterious Gandalf figure. We don't really understand much about the world and the White Tower politics. So I think that was a really smart choice to bring into season one. But most people who read the books agree that the first three Wheel of Time books are pretty formulaic. They all have almost the same plot line where where they're all together, they get divided, they end up together in the end, and they defeat the bad guy. That's pretty much how the first three books happen. Book four, most people would agree, is when it expands the world. Robert Jordan was like, okay, I've now established this world. I'm going to expand it and really get to the things I wanted to from the start. And it's not to say that he changed anything, it's just that he opened it up. Even from the very prologue of the first book, there are hints of things to come at the very end of the series. Like he was very much aware of his ending. But book four, The Shadow Rising, which season three was based on, where you deal with the Aiel culture and the history of the Aiel and how they came to be, and Rand going to Ruidion through the glass columns, and Moraine going through the rings. Like that was all so interesting to me as a book reader. To this day, my favorite chapters are the two chapters where Rand experiences the past of his ancestors in the glass columns. It's some of the best writing I've ever read. Robert Jordan managed to say so much with so few words, and it just expands the history in a way that's fascinating. It expands Rand's place in history in such a strong way. And I have to say, when I knew they were going to cover book four in season three, this was by far the scene that I was most worried about. I was just like, I don't know if they can pull this off. I'm really nervous. And they didn't just pull it off. To me, this is one of the greatest episodes I've ever seen of any show. I cannot believe how well they did it. And one of the reasons it's so good is because they were very true to the books. Was it a perfect one-to-one adaptation? No. There's, I think, 3 visions that Rand had that aren't featured in the show because they just didn't have the time. But what they managed to fit in to this scene and to this episode is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And to me, this is when it took the Wheel of Time from good fantasy show to great fantasy, maybe one of the best. And I'm curious about your thoughts as a non-book reader, Strider. Like, how did it impact you watching these scenes? Was it so confusing the first time? Did it require a rewatch to kind of get it, or did you feel like you were locked in?
Uh, well, I was absolutely locked in. I feel like I've heard. Oh, actually, because I was watching yours and Daniel's videos, so I knew, like, you were like, oh, the next one's gonna be a big one. So I was kind of like, getting hyped for, okay, whatever it is, I'm in. Cannot wait to watch it. Let's go. And so I was locked in, and as it starts moving, like, through, as we've moved through the past and so on, I was just getting like more and more into it. I remember I was even a little bit tired, because I was watching it late in the day. I was working late, whatever, and I was a little bit tired, but I was like, I have to watch this. Like, I don't, I'm just very into it, into the show at this point. And within like 5-10 minutes, like after they walk in the city and the visions start happening, literally in the first one, I was wide awake. Like it completely got me, and I was like, okay, let's go. And it flew by. And when it comes to that last moment where we see when I don't know
The
what's the
Dark
lore
One,
term, you can
essentially. Yeah.
fill in here for me. Yeah, like when that final scene happens and like the whale is broken or whatever happens, there was, yeah, I couldn't, oh my god, like, we have this
Yeah.
issue, what is happening here? And it was really, really, really terrific. But I did need to see some explanation videos because I was very confused actually with the I'm blanking. What's the
The
people's
Aiel.
Yeah.
name? The people, the Aiel. Yeah, I was confused with who is who, what are these casts and so on. So I wasn't sure. Yeah, so I needed to watch this. I watched some videos to like the next morning, um, explaining this. Then I went back and watched it again, and I was like, oh, cool. Now it's even better. So yeah, it was just terrific. As a show watcher, it was great. It got even better when I knew even more of the backstory. I think it's also what also probably hurt this complete lore immersion for me was because I didn't rewatch season one, which is where we learn about those way of the
Yep.
leaf traveling people, like that particular tribe of the Aiel, or like the kind of the Aiel. So I feel like I was missing this a little bit, but then I watched some of these videos and I was brought back to speed. And then on the second rewatch, it was just like, yeah, please, just
Yeah.
hell yeah. So I loved it. It was terrific. From the first time, second time, it got even
Aiden,
better.
did you read this far into the story when
But
you read the
yeah,
books?
yeah, I was about to ask. Let's go.
I don't think so. I think I got to like was as far as I got, unfortunately. I was I was rereading the books. I was doing the audiobooks, the Michael Kramer narrated audiobooks, and I was trying to get through them all, but I kept having too much whiplash listening to the book and then watching the show just because of the
Yeah,
like
that's
you
hard.
talked about. I think that the Matt plot line was a big thing. Like the characters are all just in fundamentally different places than they are in the
Yeah.
books, and that was something that was a little jarring for me. And so my goal was actually just to finish watching the show, and then I was going to go back and read it. So that's actually coming up on my to-do list. But I knew a little bit about what was coming up with it just from stuff I gleaned from the internet.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah, I
still
mean,
really enjoy it.
I tell most people you can't really decide whether or not to continue Wheel of Time until you've read through book 4. Because I know that like one of my older siblings, he read the first 3 and he was like, it's just the same story over and over. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. Like you have to get to book 4 to really appreciate Robert Jordan's vision. And then at least
I've
for
got
me, it's hard to stop reading it once you get to that point.
I've got a couple friends who are pretty big into it and have read the whole series. They tell me I can't remember if it's book 6 or book 7. They say there's one that's like pretty tricky to get through, but once you do,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like
Well, yeah, so there's
something about someone being stuck in a box or something.
oh, that's one of the best storylines. I wish so badly we could get that storyline in the show, and I hope we do. But all things considered, that if they had gotten a season 4, that's likely where season 4 would have ended, was with that box scene. But I will say, so there's something that some book fans, some people are going to hate me for even bringing this up, but there are some things that book fans call the slog. I mean, look, these are 15 books. It's a huge commitment to read these books, and I can understand why people are nervous to read them because it's a lot to get through. And Robert Jordan was very wordy. He also was quite repetitive. I mean, he loved describing clothing. That's a big thing that could be cut out a whole book, probably just getting rid of all those descriptions. So I can understand it's a little bit like the barrier to entry. It's pretty high, but if you can get through to book 4, I think it's worth it. The slog exists mostly for those of us who are waiting book to book. I mean, imagine what's happening with Game of Thrones right now. Imagine waiting all these years for the book, and then the book comes out and the plot doesn't move forward. That would be very frustrating. And that's kind of what happened for what we call the slog.
Oh my god,
The
yeah.
plot
that's an
slowed
issue that
way down in
I
books
think
7
that is
through
a
10.
prevalent issue that's happening with streaming right now. I mean, you've got all these shows that like there's like 4-year gaps in between seasons.
Yeah.
What was the statistic I saw? It was the Bear. The Bear has had 4 seasons come out in the time it's taken between Stranger Things
Yeah.
4 and 5.
Yep. But The Bear is one of
That's
those
insane.
it's one of those bottle shows. They shoot the entire thing in a single set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not fully, but
Mhm.
it is fascinating though. I do think that's one of our biggest problems is, I mean, that's probably one of the things that hurt the Wheel of Time the most is
Well, I
the
was
big
going
gaps
to bring
between
this up
seasons.
earlier. Yeah, I think throughout history there are so many shows that are beloved that are unilaterally agreed upon that the first season is terrible or something
Yeah.
like that. I mean, there's
Right.
so many shows out there. It's like, oh, this is the best series, but just skip the first season.
Yep.
And the model of streaming that exists nowadays is so volatile against the trial and error period that most shows have to go through, that growing pains of learning how to work with the new crew, learning the story, the actors. Like, people fall into rhythm. I think especially in Wheel of Time, like the characters, I mean, in the first season, Rand, Matt, and Perrin are supposed to be these best friends. And I feel like you don't truly see that chemistry until season 3. Like, that first episode, I was like, oh yeah, these guys are best friends. I finally like buy into it. And you know, half of that is the Matt issues with the actor, but it also just takes time for the actors to just fall into the role and just kind of learn how to wear it like a second skin.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah, I remember the actor who plays Land, Daniel Henney, was interviewed, and he basically said that. He said, "Season 3, we all know what we're doing now. We know these characters. We found our stride." And that
yeah.
absolutely shows through.
Oh yeah.
And this is one of those things that this is why I asked about Rings of Power cancellation. I know that we know that they have sort of like a soft contract for 5 seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still, they can still probably pull the plug at any time, but it'll cost them so much, it's probably not worth it. But what
Yeah.
I wonder is, you know, what I've seen a lot from people lately, I've seen a lot of people saying, I'm not sure I want to invest in any new shows anymore if I don't know if they're
Oh.
going to make it to the end. You know,
Well,
to me, the Wheel of Time, as rough
Yeah.
as the middle of the books can be for some people, the Wheel of Time ending is universally loved by anyone who got there. It is the best ending of any story I've ever read. And obviously I'm biased, but it's fantastic. And what a tragedy to commit to a show like that and not be willing to commit to get to the end. My personal opinion is if Amazon had put their faith in it and invested to the end, it would have made the money eventually, especially if they kept the season 3 quality, you know?
Well, I hate to admit it, but like, I think that kind of was my attitude towards Wheel of Time for a while, is I knew that it was kind of on rocky waters and I was afraid to like fully get attached to it because I was like, there is a high probability that like I pour my heart and soul. I mean, like, and I make commentary video on YouTube too. And like, I had some of my friends who are big Wheel of Time fans being like, oh, you should make some videos covering Wheel of Time and getting into that. And like, there was a part of me that was like, I don't know if I want to pour my heart and soul into it if, you know, Amazon's just going to pull the rug out from under it. And it's such a plague on streaming. Like, no one is willing to take a chance anymore. And the problem is that in order for these shows to stick around, people do need to take chances. So it's like this lose-lose feedback loop. And
but they also have to, I mean, actors, contracts, there's so many things that are so hard to manage in all this. I think one of the reasons that one of the speculations as to why the show was canceled is because contracts typically go through 3 seasons and then they have to renegotiate. That's expensive. Yeah. And so with a streaming service going, oh, okay, it cost us this much to produce. We didn't make as much as we'd hoped. It wasn't the smash hit we were hoping. You know, it wasn't the next Wednesday or Stranger Things. So do we just cut our losses or do we keep trying to invest in it? I can understand how difficult that is, especially when the actors are now like getting known and getting new opportunities and want more money. And there's so much to it that we don't understand behind the scenes.
I also wonder if the wide sweeping nature of the show plays into it. Because I know, for example, one of the reasons that might help shows maintain their longevity as they get farther along is that you build these sets and then you can just maintain them. You can keep using them. I mean, like we talked about the Bear. They only have to make that kitchen once and then they can just keep using it. But a show like Wheel of Time, every season they're in a new kingdom, a new place. And it's like you basically have to rebuild the show from scratch every single season. And I'm sure that makes a lot of fantasy really hard to keep up with.
I think we were kind of lucky. I mean, I don't know if both of you are Game of Thrones
Mhm.
fans as well, but I feel like we were kind of lucky that that was basically the last mainstream, high, like huge scale TV show that kind of went on. Like the only season that skipped 1 year was the last season, and I guess it made sense. But it went every season; it kept delivering, and also like to your point, Lauren, a bit earlier. Um, I think it's you who said it. The we waited 2 years for season two
Mhm.
of House of the Dragon because it was going to be the war season,
It
and
was
what
just
happened?
more buildup. Yeah.
It was basically another long trailer for season three, where okay, now it's going to be war, but that was one of the big things. And I remember, I mean, actually for me as well, like if Wheel of Time kept going out season to season, I think it's the same case for people who don't watch Rings of Power anymore, who didn't watch second season. It's the same thing. Or for me also with Stranger Things, I watched the first two seasons because it was terrific. However, I just don't want to bother. Like it's been 10 years. Like I remember watching season two with my girlfriend in 2016 when we were, I don't know, some trip somewhere. Like in 2016, season two, and we are getting season five later this year. Did it come out recently or something like this? But whatever. Like it's still not done. How are we? What's happening? Why is this so hard? And I feel like this is. I mean, those are very good points because I feel like if Wheel of Time kept
Yeah.
going like every year somehow, and even if it was like in a lower quality, I feel like most people would rather take a slightly less cosmetically pretty show and like slightly less cool looking magic if that means we get this
Right.
every
Oh,
year. And
absolutely.
also like the limitation with the number of episodes. We have done a lot of videos about Rings of Power and how hurt most of the storylines, if not even all of the storylines, are
The number of
because
episodes.
Amazon has this system where
Yeah.
it's 8 episodes per
And they have to
season,
be an hour
and
or
that's it.
less.
And
Yeah.
you don't get the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get the time to let this breathe. So I remember watching Daniel Green's videos for season three, and I remember at some point he said he felt that the first. Now you can correct me. I think maybe even the first three episodes, or at least in one or two episodes in the beginning, were
Mm.
kind of rushing through a lot of things. But that later on gave the rest of the show time to actually chill, show us the
Mhm.
traveling to the ideal waste, like have an episode where we are traveling there, we don't teleport, like having these little things. And it's,
It
I
just
mean,
doesn't exist.
yeah, the probably the
There,
main, yeah, the main enemy is
there are
basically
only movies.
the oldest,
Right.
the
Yeah,
streaming
there's
model.
no more TV. Doesn't exist. It is movies, and then it is longer movies. Those are like the only two forms of media that exist. There are very few streaming services out there that are making TV shows, and that's the same matter of the 20 season or 20 episode yearly season format just does not exist in any
Right.
meaningful storytelling way.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I would never want to go back to like regular TV or cable TV, right? I love the streaming nature of things for the most part, but this is absolutely the one place where it suffered the most. I was a big fan of the TV show Lost, and I know that
Mhm.
Lost had a sort of controversial ending. In my opinion, most people who hated the ending didn't understand it, but that's a whole other conversation. But one of the things I loved about Lost was it came out every year. It had a lot of episodes, had a lot of time to. In some ways, back then, TV shows had what were called filler episodes. Not every episode mattered to the plot because they
Yeah.
were doing 20 to 24 episodes a season. And but my favorite thing about Lost was speculating, theorizing each week before the next episode. I love that kind of thing. That's one of the things I love about the Wheel of Time. I've been on Wheel of Time forums since the late '90s because I just love theorizing about how it was going to end. That's one of my favorite things. But what I was going to say about Lost is there was a point right around, I think it was 2006, maybe 2004, I don't remember exactly, when there was a writer's strike, and season 3 of Lost got really weird for a bit, and it felt very rambly. It felt like they lost their direction. It felt like they didn't know what to do. There's this joke that they kept certain characters in a cage for like multiple episodes. It just felt like it wasn't going anywhere, and people felt caged. Then the writer strike stuff all got worked out. They were one of the few shows that even survived the strikes, if you remember that time. And then the showrunners made a contract with ABC that they would finish the story within a certain number of seasons. As soon as they made that agreement to get to the end within a certain number of episodes, the show just started picking up, and every episode was a banger, and it just got better and better and better, in my opinion, until the end. And this is the kind of thing that can't happen in the streaming days, it feels like, where you can just say, okay, we are getting to the end. This is the end. And the saddest thing to me is Wheel of Time has more of an end in mind than even Rings of Power. I mean, I know Rings of Power exists within lore that exists, but it's a lot of it is made up, right? Because of certain rights issues that they have to skirt around, and because of the fact that this was all based on histories and they're kind of making up certain storylines and characters.
Yeah, it's bullet points. It's like the appendices. So
right,
there are a lot of things.
Yeah, it's basically like having a history lesson about some, I don't know, theater of war in World War II, and you have to like create a drama, which means you have to invent, you know the names of the generals, maybe a couple of soldiers who did whatever, but you have to go in there if you want to put like a show on the ground. You have to go invent 300 other characters, lieutenants, companies, wherever, create geography, create little places, create this, create that. Absolutely. So yeah, Rings of Power definitely has this. That's one of the challenges of adapting this show. While I guess Wheel of Time has obviously the opposite.
Right.
They have to condense a lot of stuff, cut things out, make some choices, and so on.
I would compare Rings of Power to Wheel of Time too, because I think that both shows are heading towards the bombastic finale, because I think Rings of Power is the same way. It's based off of loose, speculative information, but arguably the most information we have about the story does come in at the very end. So in the same way that you were hopeful for the end of Wheel of Time, I feel the same way about Rings of Power. Is I feel like if it gets to the ending, it's going to be great, because that's the most source material we have about it, about the final fight against Sauron in the Second Age. And so
yeah, I mean,
I think
there is an ending.
Probably lend itself pretty.
That's fascinating. One thing that I'm so jealous of, obviously, Lord of the Rings is an established IP. And that's one of the reasons why, of course, if Amazon had to choose between the Wheel of Time.
Bums me about Wheel of Time. It had the opportunity to.
Right. I agree. But obviously, if they're going to choose between the two, Lord of the Rings is the stronger name. It's the stronger IP. But one of the things that Lord of the Rings has done so well since the start is merchandise. I mean, there is so much Lord of the Rings stuff out there. There are Lego sets. There are so many things you can get that are Lord of the Rings sort of branded. And Wheel of Time just did not do any of that, really.
I wonder if that's an Amazon issue, because Rings of Power doesn't have any merch. It's more.
So I have heard, but I also wonder if Amazon's rights don't relate to merch. I bet merchandise is owned by someone completely different, right? I would assume.
Yeah, so the Lord of the Rings is notorious for having this
merchandise.
Yeah, the Lord is notorious for having this. Rights for this are with them. Rights for this thing are here. Rights for that thing is back over there. It's very mixed. But that was one of the things I want to ask you. I don't know how much, because you're obviously more lore focused. But do you know? So this is kind of like a deal between Sony and Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Do you maybe know how this works? Like how come Sony has the rights? Like, do you have any idea?
Yeah, I don't know the full story, but I can tell you there is a name in the fandom that is basically equivalent to the Dark One. We don't name, which is, they're called IWAT Productions. They used to be called Red Eagle Entertainment. So what happened is, literally decades ago, Red Eagle Entertainment approached Robert Jordan for the rights. And back then, I'm sure they sold it, they pitched it well, and Robert Jordan didn't have other people coming asking for the rights to his series, so he sold it. And they have been a thorn in the fandom side ever since. Even before Robert Jordan passed, he had very terrible things to say about those people. And I don't know them personally, but I know that one of the people who runs what they've now renamed to IWAT Productions is still heavily involved in the rights. And he's listed as an executive producer on the show because legally he has to be. I don't think he has any creative control over the show, but he is an executive producer. And they really have been a thorn. As far as I know, they've retained a lot of the merchandising rights, and they've been very litigious about it, rather than encouraging and spreading that kind of thing. Instead, they make more money off of lawsuits. And there was even, I don't know if you've heard of the Winter Dragon pilot that was released, but essentially the Wheel of Time rights were set to revert back to the Jordan estate by a certain date if a pilot had not been created based on those rights. And so what they did is, without telling even Team Jordan, the Jordan estate, they didn't tell them, and they went and basically paid for a time slot like at like 3 a.m., 2 a.m. for where usually like infomercials play on a random cable network. And they created a pilot, which was the opening prologue to the Wheel of Time, that's called Winter Dragon. And they paid for a time slot to release it so that they could retain the rights. And I remember the day after that aired, which, look, it had and it had, I don't know if you know who Billy Zane is. Billy Zane was in Titanic. He played Ishamael in that. And so there's kind of a joke among the fandom that Billy Zane is part of the Wheel of Time. Anyway, I've gone on too long about this, but long story short, from what we can tell, even Harriet, the head of Jordan's estate at that time, his widow, was not aware that that was happening. She was expecting to get the rights back within a few months. And instead it turned into this huge legal battle, which ended with Sony picking up the rights and then eventually announcing the TV show in partnership with Amazon. And so it's been a really frustrating thing for fans, because as much as this iWatt Productions has said that they're fans of the TV or of the Wheel of Time, every choice they've made has hurt the Wheel of Time. I don't know if you're aware that Wheel of Time Origins, this was these short animated videos that came out with season 1. They were awesome. They're better than season 1, frankly. They're really cool little short animated lore videos that Amazon put out. And they announced a season 2 of Wheel of Time Origins. It was supposed to happen. And then they even posted a trailer for it, which I recently made a spoof video about. But anyway, they posted a trailer for season 2. We were going to get more animated lore videos. We were really excited. They announced it's coming out in August, and that was in 2023. It never happened. To this day, announcing something coming out in August is sort of a joke among the fandom. They basically never told us why, but I've been told behind the scenes that essentially iWatt, they had some rights issue with it, and they took them to court, and they wouldn't let it continue. It's so frustrating. So in a way, they might be part of the reason why the show got canned, because they weren't willing to negotiate or something. I don't know what happened there. I don't have any behind the scenes information there, but it's been a problem. So now Amazon's canceled. Sony has the rights still. As far as I know, Sony is still holding on to the rights, and I don't know if they're shopping it out or anything, but that's kind of our current hope as a fandom, you know. Well,
so yeah, so what is what is the best case scenario hope? Like, what do you want to try to push for, fight for? What can we do to get the message across?
Yeah,
to kind of
so we have,
spread awareness?
there was a Renew Watt campaign that was going on before season 4 was renewed after season 3 aired. None of us thought it would get canceled. We were sure we'd get a season 4. So it took us all off guard, except for many of the people behind the scenes who knew better. But this Save Watt campaign is the current thing we're pushing. And essentially, the current goal is to kind of try to do what The Expanse did. The fandom rallied together, and they managed to get another streaming service to take on the show and finish it. Now, I don't know what happened with The Expanse exactly. I don't know if it ever got finished, but Amazon did take it on from another network and did do more seasons. So that's kind of the goal. The best case scenario for us is Apple TV. And the reason is Apple TV has some of the highest quality out there. They don't currently have a strong fantasy IP. And I know this is sad to say, but Apple's willing to lose money on their content, which would be so nice, because again, I think it will pay for itself, but it has to get to the end to do that. And so it's an investment. It's a risk for sure. But if anyone can take that risk, it's Apple. I mean, I would have said Amazon, but you know,
well, that's what's sad is Amazon, I feel like, of most of the streaming services, I feel like has the best reputation for taking risks and chances on shows like this. Whereas I would just have to say, just shooting from the hip, probably Netflix would be the candidate who most people associate with canceling things from the get-go.
Yeah, and there are some people who are talking about HBO, but many of us feel that HBO wouldn't want to take something on that would compete with their Game of Thrones IP. you know.
Mm.
But if they took it on, I think they could do a great job. I don't know what the solution is.
think-
I've been reading articles recently that are claiming, I don't know if this is true, you could tell me. They're claiming that episodes of Rings of Power cost $60 million each. To me, that's
I think
insane if
people,
true.
yeah, I think people throw around these numbers like here and there, like everywhere, all over the place. So I don't think anybody actually knows this.
Yeah.
And it's like hard to like
The problem with
extrapolate,
Rings,
because if they paid this much for the rights, or like did they pay this much and this is also the budget of the TV show, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of numbers floating around that it's just crazy to talk about this. But to be fair, Amazon doesn't help
no,
by saying this is the most expensive show I ever made.
Right.
So there's also that, I guess,
yeah,
to this. But I was going to say,
no, that's
what do you think? I mean, we kind of touched on it. What is the best new potential home? Apple
Mhm.
TV. Honestly, if they get Wheel of Time, I will sign up for. I'll get it. I'll sign up for Apple TV,
Same. Yeah.
for Apple Plus. But I was thinking as well. I think that's a great point about HBO. They probably wouldn't want, because they are building this whole A Song of Ice and Fire universe. It probably wouldn't make sense to do this. You don't want the second fiddle, because then you can cut off the second fiddle. That's what happened to Amazon. The Rings of Power is the main one. Wheel of Time was always the second one, even though it came out first. But I was thinking, I'm not saying this is what I hope for. I agree with you. Let's go with Apple. However, I was thinking that Netflix might be like a dark horse here, because they are, like The Witcher is ending.
Yeah.
They dropped the ball on The Witcher. It's ending prematurely with season 4. And I was thinking, like, I wouldn't be surprised if actually Netflix ends up picking this up, because they don't have the big fantasy show now. But I was wondering, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, if anyone saves the show, I'd be so thankful and grateful. I think the concern I have with Netflix is, yes, they are known for canceling things, but also that there was a question that was brought up that is a really good question. If another service takes it on, do they also have to purchase the first 3 seasons? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know anything about any of that, like how that all works. I would assume yes. I mean,
I would think they, yeah, because I think Amazon still owns the rights to those. Because even though the show is canceled, I imagine those seasons will just
Right.
remain up. I mean, unless Amazon does a Disney Plus and does what they did to Willow and just axes it from the internet, which I really hope they
yeah,
don't do.
or
'cause I
like
think that's
HBO
one of
with
the
Westworld, where they
worst.
just completely got rid of it. Like, why did they do that? Yeah, I did. So
How many seasons of Wheel of Time? This would probably be a question that you might know more speculative information on, because I know they've been condensing the books. I assume they weren't going to do 15
Oh, yeah.
seasons. Do you have a number
So,
about how many?
I know that
speculated
Rafe,
they
the
would make?
showrunner. So there's a couple things I wanted to touch on here. One, I've seen a lot of comments from people who were like, "Well, if another streaming service picks it up, they just need to get a new showrunner." I know that people mean well. That there are some people who just really hate the decisions the showrunner has made. I will just say here, that is not the solution. People who dislike the showrunner and the choices that were made need to understand a couple things. One, most of the choices they don't like about the show that were made by Amazon executives and Sony, not by Rafe, the showrunner. Rafe is a huge fan of the books. He's wanted to tell the story of the books. He originally said he had a plan for 8 seasons of 10 episodes each, I believe. So that was the original plan. They have basically said they could do it in 3 more seasons, so 6 seasons. And I personally agree with that. Yes, it would be condensed, but they would hit some major plot lines that are important to get to the last battle. They can do that. I do feel they could do that. Now, I heard some rumors behind the scenes. Take this with a huge grain of salt, because I don't know if this is true, and I heard it from someone who heard it from someone who heard it from someone. But when they were in the negotiating phase, supposedly one of the things that Amazon wanted to do is they wanted to renew it for a season 4, but saying that would be the final season. And one of the things that was proposed that was then rejected, because I don't know how you could possibly do this, was basically start off the final season at the last battle, have 1 episode per character that is essentially a flashback that tells you how they got to that point. So that was one of the original ideas that was being negotiated, or at least thrown out on the table. I don't know how realistic it was, but that was supposedly one of the things I heard. Now, obviously, they were like, no way, we can't do that. So then the next thing that I heard, the latest agreement I heard that they were actually happy with, but obviously that fizzled because it got canceled, was 3 more seasons, 6 episodes each, but only 1 year apart per season. They'd essentially shoot them all at once, and then they would release them 1 year apart. I heard that was they had come to a close agreement on that. I don't know what happened, but that didn't happen. I think that would have been possible. And I think they were hoping, they were kind of writing with that possibility that they could do it in basically 18 more episodes. Anyway, obviously none of that happened.
I mean, I haven't gotten that far in the series, so I don't know how much I can speak to that. But if you think that would have been a possibility, I guess I'll take your word for it. Because to me, 15 books.
I mean, they do slow down
seasons,
significantly. I mean, just like Game of Thrones, they start to focus more on tertiary characters. Yep. They start to focus less on the main characters as the books continue. And it wasn't until Brandon Sanderson came back and sort of tightened it all back up and finished it in 3 books that it even felt possible like we'd get to an ending. So I do think they've already cut out enough that they could make it work. Do I want that? No. What I want is $200 million seasons with 10 episodes each, like 4 feature-length films or something. But I know that's not realistic. If anyone can do it, maybe Apple can. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I just as a quick, what's the word? Getting off topic. My English is not working today. Aside, yeah. I don't know. I know Aidan did, but I don't know, Lauren, if you saw Andor.
I just finished it this last week, and what a banger of a show! And I watched Rogue One again.
Incredible.
As well.
I haven't finished it yet.
I think everyone
I was
did.
just gonna say. I mean, we can also have a little detour to talk about this show. I'm down for talking about it, but I haven't seen the second season completely yet because I'm watching it with someone. But I really liked the approach they had, where they dropped 3 episodes. That's like a little arc. And I thought that was actually pretty cool, and you get more time, you get more focused stories, and I thought that was a pretty good approach to a show. But I don't know if it works for Wheel of Time, for example. But even if they did something like this, like whatever, like just give us something. But yeah, what do you think? Like the way the remaining story is as it is, and even if you cut out this extra bits that are not necessary or crucial for the story itself, do you think like this could maybe be like or like what would be your ideal season, for example? Like if you had, how many seasons would you have with how many episodes if you had to like cut out stuff that's like not very necessary?
I mean, really, I think the best kind of possible ending would have been the 8 seasons, 10 episodes each. Obviously, we never got that. We got 8 episodes each for the first 3. Another thing, you kind of touched on this, Amazon's really set on episode numbers and episode lengths. I don't know why. They must have these analytics that tell them keep it an hour and 5 minutes or less. I wish they just took more liberties and were like, if we need an hour 20, we need an hour 20. But for some reason, they don't do that. I'm sure they know retention numbers and all this other stuff that I don't.
Sorry for butting in. I actually have an interesting fact that when I was I was keeping more vague, but from what I know, Amazon's data concluded that people switch off an episode after 53 minutes. So 53 minutes is the exact number that they have for television shows for Prime Video, which is interesting. I think I mentioned this a few years ago, but that's still from the data and the studies they've done. 53 minutes is the focal point. So the idea is to get the episode to there, then hit the credits by 55, give or take normally. So yeah.
So this is another thing that I've considered is they also, I hate this, but apparently streaming services, especially Netflix, intentionally make shows that they know people will not give 100% of their attention to.
Yep.
For example, they know people will be cooking dinner or scrolling on their phone on Reddit or whatever they're doing while watching. And so this is also really hurting shows, especially something like the Wheel of Time that requires that you pay attention.
So I've seen I've seen people talking about that. My hope is that is a statistic that stems from like reality TV based shows like on Netflix, like a Love is Blind type show. Like that analytic gets poured into that. I'm hoping that is not the like.
But think about the cost of that show.
Wheel of Time
Right.
Yeah.
But think about the cost of that show compared to Wheel of Time. They can make 30 of those shows.
Yeah.
And probably get their return because people will watch them to the end, but only kind of half watch, like it's tricky. I don't know what the answer is. I think streaming comes with a whole lot of positive things, but there's some of the negative things.
I at least appreciate Disney Plus experimenting with episode, because you talk about Amazon always doing 8. It's like Disney Plus, every series is a different. Andor was 12. Some of the Marvel ones are 6. Daredevil was 9. Like they're always just all over the place.
Yeah, like
so
they have this freedom, exactly. Like who's telling you what to do? Like if the show needs more, give it more. Rings of Power, Wheel of Time, both would have greatly benefited from this. If it's Jack Reacher, is it Jack? It's Reacher. I think it's Jack. It's if Reacher, if 8 episodes is too much, do 6 episodes. Like who's there standing and beating on your head not to do it? Like I think that's a great point about Disney.
Yeah,
they really. I watched, definitely several shows on it in the last year or so, and it really had like this variety. Even within the MCU, I didn't watch all the shows, especially in the last couple of years. They mostly went down with quality, but even within like a brand, these shows vary with the number of episodes they do.
Yeah.
And the length of the episodes and so on. And on HBO we have the example where these episodes vary from like 40 something minutes to like an hour and 15-20 minutes within the House of the Dragon, for example. And it's like you are the boss, you are making this, you have the freedom to do whatever you want with the show. Why limit yourself? And I feel like the fact that what Harry just said with this 53 minutes timer statistics thing, that's a wild thing to imagine. Like I was thinking when we were talking earlier about not having these longer seasons and with filler episodes and so on, Supernatural actually finished relatively recently, though saying this, it's been 5 years since whatever happened. So, but it's like, it finished after 15 years. Most of those seasons had 20 plus episodes, so it was still very recently. It was I don't know how you can compare the size of a show, but like, it was a big show in its own way. It had a lot of episodes, and it was coming out every year. And okay, you can argue, okay, fantasy takes big scale, like what we saw about the Bear. It's a simple set, you can make it easily year to year. But still, there's so many things. There's so many freedom within these streaming platforms that they can experiment. And the fact that Amazon keeps pushing this 8 episodes up to 53, 54 minutes, that hurts Rings of Power so hard. We have talked about this a lot in the past, because this is the channel mostly grew out of talking about Rings of Power. So that's where we spent most of our time so far. But even in Wheel of Time, you can see. I remember seeing it. Even, as I said, like I'm not a book reader, but I could see that they are cutting things out and like speeding and like getting some shortcuts. Especially thinking maybe more so in season 1 and season 2, but even in season 3, at this couple of episodes, you can see that they're kind of rushing through. Like this could be a whole scene, a whole big emotional moment, and yet it's resulting in like 3 sentences so that we can skip here. And then, okay, as I said, season 3 balanced it out eventually, because then the rest of the season was much more breathable pace. But yeah, it's just a whole. Yeah, I mean that's why we're here ultimately, because Wheel of Time got the X because of all of these factors, I guess.
Yeah, it's so hard to know. I mean, it's been interesting for me to watch the changes over the last few decades of TV and how streamers have come in and totally disrupted the cable model. And this is something Amazon's experimented with a lot. Is we could put ads back in. That's what made money on TV. Let's put ads back in. I get the impression that Amazon would rather we pay for the lower tier of Prime to get the ads. I think they might get more money out of us that way. And so I had a real struggle here because I wanted to kind of show my support for canceling Prime, but we use Prime for delivery like a lot. And so I was like, well, I'm at least going to minimize my Prime subscription down from the ad tier, or from the ad free tier back to the ad tier. And they almost like encouraged it. You know how hard it is sometimes to cancel certain streaming services? it was so easy to go from the ad-free tier to the ad tier on Amazon. I was like, this is too easy. They must want me to do this. That's how I felt about it. But anyway, my point is, I think even Amazon and these streamers don't really know what's best. I think what's sad for me is that when money is king, which it always is in these situations, art suffers. And whether or not you believe the Wheel of Time show was art, there were elements of season 3 that I did feel they were. Like, it's unfortunate that we can't just tell these great stories and do these great things that could absolutely be funded by these multi-billion-dollar corporations. But because money is the driving factor and they're looking at all these weird analytics and making all these strange choices about episode lengths and all this, we, at the end of the day, those of us who love these stories suffer, because we don't get the story to be told in the way that would be best. And to me, the Wheel of Time story deserves to be told. And I think that's really the point of this, right? This whole thing is save Wheel of Time. If we can, we will. If you haven't gone to savewatt.com, go there, sign the petition. It's not difficult. We're not going to use those emails that you give us to sell you something. That's not the point of this at all. And that you can also click on the take action button, and there are a bunch of other things you can do. You can send a personal video that's very easy to do right through the website. If you click on submit fan videos, literally through the browser, it will set you up to record a quick 30-second video where you just tell people why you love the Wheel of Time. There are all these other things you can participate in on social media. The whole goal here is to just get a lot of attention. And now is the time to do that. We may be a week or two away from knowing if this works, right? So it's kind of time is of the essence. So if you're on the fence about Wheel of Time, but there are other streaming services that you absolutely love, or streaming shows that you absolutely love, please consider participating in this Save Watt. The more this kind of thing happens, the better it is for us as the consumers of these wonderful stories, right? Shows that you might not even pay attention to, like The Expanse, have been saved by these kinds of things, which is just in the long term better for us who love these stories and want to see them to the end. So I guess that's what I would leave you with. If you don't mind, can I read a quote from the show that hits me pretty hard?
Please do.
This is right from the first episode. Tam is talking to Rand, and he's talking about the Wheel of Time turning. And he says, all we can do is the best we can with the life that's given to us and take comfort from it, that no matter what happens, what pain we face, what heartbreak, even death, the wheel keeps turning, always. And we try again, maybe do a little better than the last time. That's really the theme of the Wheel of Time. It's about the wheel just keeps on turning. So why don't we do the best we can while we can? That's how I feel about this. I know it's a long shot. It's a slim chance that the show will be picked back up, but let's do what we can while we're here. Let's try to do this. And I promise you, this is related to the Lord of the Rings show too, because it could be your fandom that has to deal with this grief sooner than you think. We just don't know. And so I think we need to send a strong and clear message that these kinds of stories deserve to be told. I know it's an expensive investment, but if anyone can afford it, Amazon or Apple can. So, let's push. And I think we'll all be better for it. The Wheel of Time show wasn't perfect. There's a lot of problems with it, but I would be devastated if we can't get to the end with this turning of the wheel. How many decades before it gets rebooted if that happens? I just don't know. So that's my spiel. That's my soapbox.
I mean, that was wonderfully said. As well, I think even for people who are not maybe fans of the show but are fans of the books, I would never read these books. My life doesn't allow me to read a lot in the last year or two, but because of how much I love the show, this is extremely high. Like, this is probably the next big series I'm going to pick up, hopefully within the next year when some things in my life settle down. I know people who started reading the books. Aidan said he kind of went back to them because of the show. So whatever it is, and also, like, to connect this to the Rings of Power, I have friends who have not read any Tolkien books prior to seeing the Rings of Power. They have seen the movies, they have liked the movies, but for a reason they didn't get to it, and then they saw the TV show. They were like, you know what, this is really, maybe I should go into this. And I did a book club with friends who have not read the books before and were inspired by Rings of Power. We did a book club online because they wanted to go through the books. And ultimately, this is having a show like this, even if it's not canon, if it's not like following the canon or whatever. Ultimately, it is to the benefit of the series of books as well, because it does bring new people, even if they hear about, oh, this is so much better in the books, this is really bad, whatever. Okay, then they want to see, because if they like this, imagine what they will like when they read the books. So there's a lot of, like, everybody wins if Wheel of Time gets renewed. Everybody wins, and I would say, let's all at least sign the petition. It's literally like 10 seconds. Usually, if you have like the autofill ready, it's really, really easy. And let's see. Hopefully, this gets picked up, because honestly, it was just absolutely terrific.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if this is allowed on your stream, or if you're okay with this. Do you think you'd get hit with a copyright issue if you tried to play my video there as a way to end the stream? The video that's on the Save Watt site. I don't know if you'd get a copyright problem with it.
I mean,
does it have footage from Wheel of Time in it?
Yes.
Okay, I can try do something one moment.
I mean, I have like I'm whitelisted on YouTube, so I can get away with showing footage without getting a copyright issue. But I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I do feel this video does a good job of really encouraging people to sign the petition. And it's just taking quotes directly from the show that are, in my opinion, very inspirational.
Sometimes I agree with that.
Tide sweeping us along against our control. And sometimes it's as fragile as gossamer.
What does the prophecy say? What are the prophecies?
The wheel calls you to this, whether you can bear it or not.
What of the heroes of today? The heroes of another age's legend. I think it's time we start acting like it.
The fate of all of us rests on you now.
All we can do is the best we can with the life that's given to us, and take comfort from it. But no matter what happens, what pain we face, what heartbreak, the wheel keeps turning. Always.
There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the Wheel of Time, but it was a beginning.
There's the call to action for you. And if you can, go to savewatt.com and watch that video in full. The show really did some great things that I'm just so excited about. It did get some of the message of the books across. And as I've already kind of said this, but this matters to all fantasy fans, in my opinion. Like, we are kind of at a weird crossroads with big budget stuff on streaming services. It seems more and more like they're trying to streamline things. And I just want to get these stories told in a positive way. You know, we were talking about Andor. That show requires you watch. It really does. But what a fantastic show. I think there's still room for this kind of thing. So, yeah, please do what you can to support us and support this. And I promise we'll do the same thing if Rings of Power is ever stuck in this same situation.
Yeah, hopefully not. But yeah, good to know. I mean, I think that is a great point. Imagine if there was a similar approach to Andor, for example, which is a terrific show that requires you to take time. It goes slowly, it builds and builds and builds until it explodes into something amazing. And sometimes good things take time. And the fact that this show took one season, how terrible to find this footing. because season 2 was already really good, and then to get so good in season 3, I just get excited, even though I have no idea what's coming next. I just get so excited to think about what would be in the coming seasons. But with this, I would like to say thank you to Harry for doing everything behind the scenes, to Aidan who was with us, to everybody who tuned in, as a couple hundred people. Thank you so much for being with us. We will try to be more active in recent weeks and to cover a lot more things. Our podcast should get back to being more active as well. And finally, I want to take to Lauren firstly for helping myself personally enjoy the show way more than I was already doing. It was absolutely terrific, and also thank you for trying to obviously push this Say What campaign and for being with us. So yeah, I really appreciate your channel. Everybody please go check out Lauren's channel as well. So sign the petition. It's like 10-15 seconds tops to make a lot of people potentially happy. And then please go check out Lauren's channel. It's really it's a thing of beauty. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, Lauren, thank you so much for being with us, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I see that Harry wanted to say something real quick.
Yeah, so there's just a few small things. First of all, I think as someone who didn't read the books, I think I thoroughly enjoyed season 3. Season 1, of course, was a bit to get into, but then near the end of it, I thought, okay, I can start to see where it's going. Season 2 was a big upgrade on that. And then yeah, I think as a lot of people have said, season 3 blew the waters for me. So, and I think hopefully at Amazon, or if again someone else picks it up, I think would be a good scenario. And I think this initiative is really good. So yeah, I would suggest as many people from Fellowship of Fans, in our community audience want to go check it out, and please sign, then please do. It's the pinned one in the link. Sorry, the top pinned comment, and yep, I've got it here on screen as well. And one thing as well, and now so away from that, I know I promised a small update. We will have a small, interesting Rings of Power update next week, so early next week on our website. So yeah, you just look forward to that as well. So yeah, but yeah, I'll lead it back to you, Strider.
So I'm seeing some people are asking. I'll just post it again in the chat. So unraveling the pattern. This is Lauren's channel. Please go check it out. Also, you just reached 50,000 subscribers. So I know this is a thing that we were working on, and I'm very happy when I saw it the other day that it reached this number. So congrats for that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a big milestone, and it's all the more sad that the show's been canceled.
Yeah, but let's see. Hopefully, we can do something about that. So yeah, with this, thanks everybody. Thank you so much. Please go sign the petition. Watch this really cool video. Go check out Lauren's channel, and we will see you very soon.